What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Joe Rogan. This is a recap of when Deontay Wilder was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and they were talking about Joshua, and he doesn't have an opponent, and he's not a real champion because he hasn't fought the top guys. Now, mind you, this podcast was before the Wilder Fury 2 negotiations fell through. Okay, this was before that. Okay, because that kind of happened all of a sudden. You know, he got the deal, then it was like out like a light. And I was just hearing Rogan, pump up Deontay Wilder. You know what I mean? And Wilder was saying, "Oh, they're begging for a fight." They don't have anyone to fight. And, Rogan's with the, he's scared to fight. He's not the real champ. You're the real champ. And I look at that now. It's just ironic how things changed. Deontay lost the Tyson Fury fight. Joshua came to America and broke a record for fighting a quote-unquote nobody, which Miller is technically a nobody because he's just a nobody with a lot of noise, right? But he's fighting his mandatory, Dominic Brazil. So you ask yourself, like, well, if Joshua's fighting Miller and Deontay Wilder's fighting Brazil, you could argue those are like pretty much, it's hard to make a crack at that, but those are not high caliber fights. That's definitely not like a rematch with Fury, right? Because that's what Deontay Wilder was banking on, and he's bragging to Joe Rogan. And the funny thing that gets me about Joe Rogan is I love his podcast, but it's like he hangs around Brandon Schaub, right? Brandon Schaub is a Wilder guy. He's a straight up Wilder fan. In fact, he's like a Wilder dick rider. You know what I mean? He's more than a fan. Because you got a Wilder fan, then you got the Wilder Nets, then you got the Wilder Knights, then you got the Wilder dick riders. He's up here. But anyway, I guess the association with him, he collaborates with Brandon Schaub all the time, or Schraub, whatever his damn name is. But they talk a lot because he's on that podcast, just kind of like a co-spokesman on that podcast. So he's good friends with Deontay Wilder, so they can get, interviews with him and what's going on with him, which is cool. But then you can see that's where the bias comes in. It comes in by association, right? So the thing that got me is when, Joshua was on AK and Barack, Breakfast Club, Sway's Universe, Jalen and Jacoby. He was like everywhere except that podcast. You know what I mean? Because it's like now I can respect all those other podcasts now. And Joe Rogan, through the association with Brandon Schaub, he loses credibility because of him. Because that's the one guy and the one guest they should have had on this show. You know what I mean? Like, let me give you an example. Charlemagne the God, he's a Wilder guy. But he told Joshua to his face that he's a Wilder guy. He's like, I'm going for Wilder. I think Wilder's going to knock you out. And that's good. That's how you're supposed to, because that's exactly what he told Wilder when Wilder was there. Wilder, I think you're going to beat Joshua. Okay, that's no harm in that. You know what I mean? But not to ever even have him on this show is suspect. You know what I mean? You can look at that. It's actually chicken shit. Because if you sit there and you roast a guy, and then that same guy, you cater to one champion, which is Deontay Wilder, right? He's American, I get it. It's an American podcast, I get it. But by the association with Brandon Schaub, you just take his side without even bringing him on. to let him fill you in on what happened in those negotiations. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's one mark against Joe Rogan through his association with Brandon. You know, because Brandon's an ex-MMA guy and whatever he does now. I guess hang around Joe Rogan. I don't know. I don't know what he does. But anyway, I just thought that was strange how things change, you know, and it would be a treat to see him. And like you guys that see my videos, I've always said, well, Anthony Joshua should definitely be on Joe Rogan, because, you know, Joe Rogan, Brandon Schraub, and I want Brandon's ass to be there too, so he can look him in the face and say, hey, I think Wilder will beat you, you know. But by 90, I don't even think they reached out to him to even want it, because, you know, he was here, he was everywhere. He came to the backyard of Wilder, you know, and came on every talk show, right? Not just one and said what he had to do, you're a coward, Joshua, you're scared, and then fly home. No. You know, he came here and stayed here, what, about 2 weeks, week and a half, something like that, promoting the fight. So I just thought that was strange, and the condition they're in now, and they're fighting mediocre competition. So everyone kind of just goes back to where they were doing, you know. But it goes to show you how funny things are when you think that you're going to be this star or you're in this spotlight, and how you act when you're in this spotlight, and that reveals you, right? But anyway, what do you guys think? Tell me if you think that Anthony Joshua should be on Joe Rogan, so Joe Rogan can ask him the questions he needs to ask him and Brandon at the same time. Of course, please subscribe, and you guys can Counterpunch. Peace.